everyone and welcome to another movie review. It has taken me a while, but I have finally watched Emma, the latest film adaptation of the beloved novel. It was released earlier in this year, 2020, and I have done my best to avoid spoilers up until this point. So, apart from loving the book, I was entirely spoiler-free. I want to mention now, however, that I will be talking spoilers in this review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, I suggest you do so first. Also, should you feel in need of a recap and have a spare 30 minutes, then feel free to check out my video on Emma the novel. Link is in the description below. Now, I have many thoughts on this movie, but overall I thought it was very enjoyable. It has an obvious comedic direction. This is not your typical romance drama film. And I can respect having a clear vision and sticking with it, to be honest. That being said, let's go through the various points. So, in terms of casting and characters, we first have Emma, who is played by Anya Taylor-Joy, which I think was an excellent choice. I recently watched her in The Queen's Gambit, so I went into this already a huge fan. There is a slight difference, however, in the character of Emma, which is a pattern throughout all of the characters really, and that is that they are all slightly exaggerated. Emma's arrogance and snobbishness is much more clear here, almost to the point of her coming off as a mean girl. But it feels highly deliberate as well, because by doing this, her arc becomes more apparent as well. Mr. Woodhouse is played by Bill Nighy, which I think is another excellent choice. He was my favorite character in the book because he still had some subtlety to him, but there is literally no room for subtlety in a 2-hour runtime. He did make me chuckle quite a few times though. As for Mr. Knightley, I've always imagined Knightley as a very tall, dark-haired and austere-looking gentleman with a lot of poise. And Johnny Flynn didn't really represent that to me, and the character itself was a lot more dramatic and lacked that dignified composure that I associate with Mr. Knightley. And I certainly wasn't expecting to see him naked. Kinda needed my smelling salts there for a moment. But you know, the movie had to make us ship Emma and Knightley and had a very short time to do it, so I completely understand these decisions, even though I don't entirely agree with them. Mr. Elton was a pleasant surprise. While the ridiculousness of his character has also been very much increased, I loved Josh O'Connor in this role. I'm so used to seeing him as Charles, Prince of Wales in The Crown, so it was really interesting to see him take on such a different character. Now, Harriet Smith is played by Mia Goth, and while I enjoyed her portrayal of the character, I was a bit distracted by her lack of eyebrows. I might just be nitpicky here, but I was honestly bewildered about this every single time she was on screen. And then, I want to mention Miss Bates. I was thrilled when I saw Miranda Hart in that scene in the church at the start of the movie. I immediately understood that she must be playing Miss Bates. I adored Miranda Hart as Chummy in Call the Midwife, and I thought it was the perfect choice. Because only she, with her natural charm and comedy, could portray such a dull character and still make her entertaining. But then as the movie went on, I was a little disappointed. Instead of being this dull character who just drones on forever, she was made a silly and confused character. And that's not at all how I see her, but maybe that's just me. And finally, we have Mrs. Elton, who's actually the only character that it wasn't exaggerated at all. But she is such an extreme character in the book that There was no need to enhance her character traits to make her personality clear in the film. I think the actress Tanya Reynolds did a great job with her. She was just the right amount of unpleasant. It was just great. So those were the characters I had the most thoughts on. I can't go through each and every one of the actors, unfortunately, but overall I was very much impressed by the cast and I think they did a marvelous job. So now I want to move on to talk about the story, because there are some interesting changes here. Of course, as I mentioned in my Pride and Prejudice review, sacrifices will have to be made in order to condense the story to fit the feature film runtime. But Jane Austen stories are difficult that way because they're character-based stories. All of the drama and intrigue are the result of the various characters' personalities. There are no plot devices or MacGuffins to push the story along. So if you don't have time to properly show all of these personalities, then the story kind of crumbles. I actually realized this when I wrote the script for my video on Emma the novel, and my intention was to write a short synopsis, but then it ended up being 30 minutes long. So I really don't envy the person who wrote the script for this movie. I think the biggest deviation from the source material is the fact that everything is a lot more dramatic. There's even a point in my notes where I just wrote, "There is quite a lot of screaming." Mr. Knightley's feelings for Emma are a lot more passionate. They've added a scene where he walks to Emma's house in the early morning hours just after the ball where they dance for the first time, and when he gets there he doesn't know what to do. I felt this a bit like an early 19th century version of a drunk dialing. Poor Mr. Knightley. We've all been there. And then we have the scene at Box Hill, where Emma commits her biggest mistake in the story by openly insulting Miss Bates in front of the others. This scene was so cringeworthy, I am quite certain that even the most socially inept people in the world would find this very awkward indeed. They really put a lot of emphasis on how awkward this was supposed to be, just to make sure that no one misses it. In the book, they just sort of glance over it, and it's not until afterwards when Mr. Knightley scolds Emma that we realize the true impact. And then we get to the final misunderstanding in the story, where Emma finds out that Harriet actually has romantic feelings for Mr. Knightley and not Frank Churchill. So in the book, this exchange isn't dramatic at all. It's just Harriet saying it as it is, and it's only through Emma's inner dialogue that we learn of her own feelings for Knightley. But the movie decided on a different direction. They had Harriet confront Emma by saying, "You think of Knightley for yourself," and thus creating awkwardness between them. While I understand and like that they've given Harriet a bit of agency, I don't like that it creates a rift and even a rivalry between these two friends. I thought that was a bit unnecessary. So now, I want to talk about the ending. First of all, the conversation between Emma and Knightley in the garden. This is supposed to be a romantic climax that all of the misunderstandings have been leading up to. And they give her nosebleeds. Nosebleeds? I mean, nosebleeds. Can you seriously think of anything more awkward? Like, in the entire world. It's like they're deliberately making a mockery of romantic climaxes in romance films. I didn't like it. But what I did actually like was that they made Emma clean up her own mistake by having her go back to Mr. Martin and encourage him to renew his offer of marriage to Harriet. I really think this made her development a lot more clear and satisfying. Because in the book, Emma just offers Harriet to go to London for a while to stay with her sister, as she's trying to figure out what to do about the whole Knightley situation. And in London, Harriet bumps into Mr. Martin and they rekindle their romance on their own. So Emma was off the hook, basically. That's a bit of a lucky coincidence, and it's not as satisfying as having Emma come full circle in her development and actively trying to make up for her past mistakes. So yes, a very good change there at the end. They've also snuck in a couple of kissing scenes here and there, which is always refreshing in a Jane Austen adaptation. So generally speaking, Emma is a coming-of-age story about an... No panic. So generally speaking, Emma is a coming-of-age story about an arrogant young woman who has to learn some important life lessons. And I think this movie captured this sentiment beautifully. But you can't make a good Jane Austen adaptation without my next point, which is costumes and sets. This movie was a delight to behold, a feast for my eyes. Every single costume and Every single costume and set piece felt so carefully constructed, and I just want to quickly list off some of my favorites here. First, we have the playful pink and green color palette of Emma's house, specifically the dining room and her bedroom. It gave the home a kind of whimsical atmosphere that went so well with these characters. The same goes for the little shop in the village of Highbury. Again, this set design gave such a beautiful and yet playful look to the film. And while I am no expert on historical clothing, I do have enough interest in it to know that these costumes are incredibly well done. And every character has something that makes them stand out from the others. From Harriet's simple, almost uniform-like clothes compared to Emma's more extravagant and individualistic style. And then to Miss Bates, who obviously feels a bit old-fashioned, or perhaps just too poor to update her wardrobe. And finally to the pompous Mrs. Elton and whatever it is she's wearing on her head in this scene. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So, to sum this all up, the whimsical nature of this movie made it really light-hearted and easy to digest. And while I don't necessarily agree with all the decisions and changes, I still very much enjoyed it and would recommend it to anyone who's just looking for some fun and also intellectually stimulating entertainment. Those were my thoughts on Emma, so now I am curious to know whether those of you watching have seen it and what are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with the points I have mentioned? Please share in the comments below. So don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe as well if you enjoyed it. That would really make my day. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you back next time.